Hey, it's Luke here from BassGorilla.com. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make your own kicks in Ableton Live. You'll get full control over the sound, so you can create more of like an 808 style kick or more of a punchy kick, depending on what style of music you're going to make. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell icon next to it so that you find out as soon as we release new videos. And please like and leave a comment if you enjoy this video. So let's get into it. What I'm going to do to begin with is come over and basically just recreate what I've built here in a completely new track. So the first thing we're going to do is use a synth. You can pretty much use any synth for this. I'm going to be using Ableton Operator, so I'm just going to come over to Instruments, drop that in there, and you can hear that what we have here is just a sine wave. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring the sustain level all the way down, and then I'm going to play with the attack time. So we're going to want to have this in a range so that we can play with this and adjust it to create any kind of kicks we like. So you'll be able to save this instrument rack and use it in future projects. So first thing I'm going to do is press Command G. Then I'm going to press Map and map the decay time of oscillator 1 to macro 1, and then play around with the minimum and max. So for more of an 808 style kick, you might want something more like, 3.5 seconds as a max decay time. Now you can really dial that in. Next thing we're going to do is turn on the pitch envelope, and I'm going to pitch this up by 100%. So if you look at the pitch envelope, you can see that it starts at an initial peak of 12 semitones up and it drops down. So what we want to do is map the decay to another macro so that we can control that. So let's just map that to macro 2. Probably not going to want to go as high as that, so I'm going to set this max value to be something like 300 milliseconds. But even 300 is too high. Cool, so now that we've got that, we've got our basic sound. I can bring this down an octave, or even 2 octaves down. Cool, okay, so that is the basic part of the sound. It's a sine wave, and the next step is to distort that sine wave slightly. So there's a few ways that we can do that inside Operator before we start using effects units outside of Operator, which we'll get to in a bit. First thing we can do is add some FM synthesis, and so what we can do here is play with the level of oscillator B and just add some FM into A. And you can hear that's way too high. But something like -20 as a max level might be okay. So I'm going to map that to macro 3, bring this down to -20 decibels, and have the minimum as -infinity so that we can turn it off if we want. Now, as well as having the level of oscillator B, what we're also going to want to do is bring the sustain level of oscillator B all the way down. And we're going to want to be able to play with the decay time of that. So I'm going to map that decay time again. I'm going to map that to macro 4 this time. And just going to leave it set between 1 millisecond and 60 seconds. Cool. So we got that. Another way that we can distort this sound is by using the filter. And actually, before we move on to the filter, what I actually want to do is just bring up the max level of oscillator B. And the reason why is that because we've brought the sustain all the way down, we might want the max level of oscillator B to be a lot higher. So let's bring that to 0. Dial that in a bit, so -8.5 is sounding okay. Okay, we've dialed that in a bit. So click on the filter shell here and you'll see that you can control the frequency of the filter, but you can also control this shaper. So we have soft, hard, sine, and 4-bit. So when we select soft and then we bring up the shaper drive, maximum it comes to is 12. So let's map that drive to a macro. And it's different when you play it in soft mode compared to hard. Hard is giving it a lot more impact. Sine also sounds alright. I think I'm going to go with hard for this. Another thing that you can play with is the coarse tuning of oscillator B. So that is one way that you can add more of a clicking sound at the beginning, just by bringing up that coarse tuning. So right now I've got it at 4. That's bringing in a bit of a click. But now we've got pretty nice sounding click and kick there. So what we can do, this is optional, but you can add a clicking sound by inserting another synth. So what we can do is click on this chain selector here, and we can drop in another instance of operator here. And this instance, I'm going to rename this and call it noise, or I could even rename it and call it click, because that's what we want it to do. And we can rename this and call it lows, or we could call it sine. I'll call it sine. So let's solo this click, and right now you can hear it's just playing a sine wave. If we change the waveform of oscillator A to be white noise, then it's obviously just going to play white noise. And if we bring down the sustain level all the way to -infinity, then we're going to want to map that decay time again. So I'm just going to click on map that decay time to macro 6 and bring it up to its max level. Oscillator B decay time. Is that the right setting? One second. Okay. Yeah, that was not the right setting. So it's A of this other synth. So it's going to be this. Okay, you're not going to want something that long, but we'll just leave it like that so that we have a lot of range. Another thing that you'll notice about white noise is that it pretty much fills the whole frequency spectrum, and I can demonstrate that to you by just going over to audio effects and dropping in an EQ8. And if you have a look, you can see that it fills up the whole frequency range. So what we're going to want to do is to stop that from messing with the sine wave. If I solo the sine wave, you can see it peaks down there at around 50 Hertz, and it fills up going all the way up to around 10k Hertz. But we're going to want to roll off and high pass or low cut this click. So what we can do is on the filter shell, change this to a high pass. And you may want to even be able to control that. So we could map that frequency to macro 7. Do something like that. Make it more of a click. Now, with the white noise, there is no need for us to add a pitch envelope, because it doesn't make a difference with white noise. If I bring out this, you can hear it's not really doing anything. Okay, so another thing that we're going to want to control is the level of oscillator A on this click thing. So I'm going to map that level to macro 8. Now we'll be able to dial that in however we like. If I unsolo this, you can add in a bit of click, control the roll off, control the decay of that. So that already sounds like an okay kick sound, but you're going to want to process it further outside of this instrument rack. So first thing we'll do is just rename this and call it Kick Machine 1 and hit save here and just click enter. So now it's saved in your instrument racks here in Ableton Live for future projects. So what we're going to want to do now is process this further. So the way we're going to do that is come over to audio effects. First thing that I'm going to do is saturate it a bit more or distort it a bit more. So I'm going to load up a saturator and I'm going to play with the drive. Next thing I'm going to do is play with the dry wet. And we're currently in analog clip mode. We can change this to soft sine, medium curve, hard curve. So you can play with all of these and find out which one you think sounds best. I think it's fine with an analog clip. Turn on soft clip. Cool. Okay, so we've distorted the sound further. Now what we can do is shape the overall dynamics of it, and we can do that with a compressor. So let's use the glue compressor. And first thing I'm going to want to do is boost up the attack time so that we let through some of that initial transient of this kick. And next thing we're going to want to do is boost the makeup, actually pull down the threshold. And now boost the makeup. Let's activate the soft clip in. Dry wet. Okay, and let's bring down the decay time. So you'll notice that when you put on something like a saturator or some drive or distortion and some compression, once you play around with those settings, you might find something that might make you think, okay, I'm going to come back now and I'm going to play around with the settings inside the kick machine to dial this in a bit more. Seeing as we're now feeding the signal through this saturator and through this glue compressor. So there's the decay time of the sine. So it becomes very tribal sounding when you boost that, and that is the oscillator B decay time. Okay, let's just play a little bit with the filter frequency here. It's not doing much yet. We'll play with the decay. Okay, bring up that drive. So that's sounding pretty full. Cool, so that's pretty much it, but there's one last little trick which sounds pretty cool, and that is to put the tiniest, slightest bit of reverb on it. So we'll load up a reverb. That sounds terrible, but what we can do is dial it in. So we're just going to bring the dry wet all the way up, activate this low cut here. Bring down that decay time a lot. Kicks are always in mono, hopefully, so you're going to want to bring the stereo width of that reverb sound down. So if this is basically at 0 dry wet, that's our original sound, and then bringing this up. So you really just want that very low, like less than 20% probably. So if you're going for more of an 808 sound and you want a longer tail, what you're going to want to do is in your sine wave, there's a couple of things you're going to want to do. Firstly, you're going to want to change voices to 1. And another thing you're going to want to do is probably just dial down the amount of drive that you're putting onto things. So for example, the oscillator B level, it's one thing you can play with. Another thing is the overall drive. If you click on this filter shell, you'll see the shaper drive. And then there's a drive on the saturator. It's also the compressor. So for different length tails on this sine wave, you're going to want to dial in all of the other settings basically. That's the point that I'm trying to get across. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video, leave a comment, do all that good stuff. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. One more thing is, if you'd like to download this project file, I'm going to save it and make it available. So you can click the link in the description below this video and then go to a page on our site and download this for free. So thanks again. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.